The problem with our industry, I'll get your opinion on this. The problem with our industry is that the same reason why people by the droves run into the business is the same thing that runs them out of the business, which is I want to be my own boss. I want to work for myself. I want to be this independent contractor. And truth be told, most people can't be trusted to be their own boss in the beginning. And so when they have all this freedom and all this autonomy, it's the thing that causes them to be not productive. Because it's like, oh, I can just do whatever I want. I have no accountability, et cetera, et cetera. No one's checking in on me. We know human beings left on their own always, always, always choose the path of least resistance. So tell us what your experience was on the team.
Yeah, great question. So starting out, the environment and the culture was 100%. It didn't really feel like you were your own boss per se, or able to do whatever you want. So showed up, I'm a big training and into fitness guy. I think that's super important. I start my mornings every single day, get a good workout in, and then we'd head to the office. So 9 a.m. team meetings, there was role play involved, there was scripts involved. And then for at least an hour, every single day, we had to make outbound prospecting calls. So it was either calls, you could text, email, or whatever, but there was a set routine. The team lead, I thank him for it still to this day. We're still super cool. Was like, guys, the number one thing that will help your business is prospecting, right? Like everyone hears it, but I think it's very easy for people to go, oh man, I'm going to spend this next hour and a half on Canva editing my photo and then send it out to, 10 people. I think it might help. And, while some of that stuff is, you could argue is maybe needed, the most important thing is prospecting. And you've said that forever. That was part of what attracted me to your coaching program, because I saw you, I'd watch your videos all the time. And I'm like, obviously this guy gets it. He's way further on in the journey than I am personally, but I want to surround myself in those types of environments. So, it was very structured.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you owe a lot to that team. You got lucky to go onto a great team with a great leader early in your career. And I love what you said. Most people, they know they should be prospecting. When we talk about prospecting, all we're talking about is you being the one to initiate a conversation with a human being, preferably a homeowner, versus waiting to have someone call you, which is never going to happen. It's what most new agents think is going to happen. They're going to magically get their license, and then I don't know what they think or how they think it, Josh. They magically think people are just going to start coming out of the woodwork that want to buy and sell a house. So they know that. They're just not doing it. And the difference between knowing what to do and actually doing it, it's the difference between succeeding and failing in this industry. And so not only that, but you guys had a schedule. It was structured. You had a morning huddle. Then you worked on your sales skills. Tell me, what did you think of all of this? Did you join the team right after you got licensed, or were you by yourself for a short while? Like, I'm curious, when you got into that, we're like, man, I didn't realize that real estate was like a sales business, or did you know that's what you were getting into?
I always knew that it was sales, but I didn't think I knew what to expect, because again, I never had been a part of any other sales jobs before. I hadn't been a part of anything really. I worked at a gym part-time.
So interesting.
I was going to school. So, as far as like communication and stuff, I always felt like I was good at that. I had, done a lot of that throughout my life, but yeah, I never really had any serious like sales jobs before. It's funny, Brandon, because when I first got licensed and I was done playing college baseball, I remember we were actually a part of Keller Williams to start, great franchise, part of Keller, show up, get all signed up with the lady that signs you up and stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember getting home that night and just being like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? It was that first feeling of like overwhelmed. I don't know a single thing about this. I thought I really wanted to do it. I'm glad I did, but thought I wanted to do it. And I'm at a point where I'm like, all right, well, here we go. So I'm very lucky that I made the decision to join that team. And I think about that all the time. When I think back, that is 100% what put me in the position that I'm in today, and to have any type of skill set today. Obviously, we always got to get better. That's why I seek other coaching and one-on-one stuff. I think it's important, but that base is definitely what got me here. So, yeah, it was hard, but it's one of those things where it's like, hey man, not making any money is hard too. Right. So the end of the day, it's like get around the right people that are actually going to help you get to where you need to go, and then just do the work.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm curious, if do you think that if people knew real estate was a direct sales business, that they would get in it? In other words, I think people get into it because they think it's really, really sexy. They think it's really fancy. Do you think if they knew what you and I know, which is it's very difficult, it is very, I mean, you have to have a lot of grit. You got to have a lot of discipline, a lot of focus. And it is, in fact, a direct outbound sales business. If people actually knew that, do you think this industry would attract as many people as it does?
No.
I don't
I
either.
I think like I did when I first started, I was naive. I'm a confident dude, but I was definitely naive. And I got to a point where I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to show all these crazy houses and meet some of the coolest people, which is true. The better you get, you do show a lot of cool houses. You do meet a ton of cool people. I'm very thankful for the relationships. But the only way you ever even get there is when you have a skill set and you're actually good at what you're doing. Because
Yeah.
if you never make enough calls, if you never talk to enough people, you'll never have an opportunity to go show good houses or to meet cool people. So, no, I think that if people knew exactly what this was, they'd go, man, there's way more time, energy, and effort than I thought.
Yeah, and if you could wave a wand and you could magically give a message to anybody out there thinking about getting into real estate, because I'll tell you, this is the problem. The problem is the way in which people are getting recruited into the industry is built on a mirage, right? It's built on like this false expectation of what it is and what it isn't. And so if you had the opportunity to tell every single human being that was ever going to think about, okay, I'm going to go and get into real estate sales, how would you set the expectation of what they're about to get into? Like, how would you describe it?
I think it starts with having them actually go and mirror and actually watch what the business is. I think it'd be a really good idea to have someone come in. Like, for example, anytime I ever recruit someone, so I do have a team now. I have brought in some agents and recruited
There you
some.
go.
And I think it's important. I'm extremely transparent with people. Hey, man, you need to know what this is before you do it. Because again, like you said, people think it's going to be super easy. What I look for when I'm talking to people, especially if they're new, I always ask them the same thing. Hey, do you like talking to people? Yes. Hey, are you okay with actually like making calls and experience rejection? They might say yes, they probably aren't yet, but still, I think it's important to ask like real questions. And then I would encourage people, go watch some teams in your area or go talk to different offices, like go get real experience before you commit to anything and see what you think about it. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of people do have a false expectation of what this is, and you could save yourself a ton of time and headache if you went and spent a couple days just watching someone do it.
So smart. I totally agree. And I used to do that with people that thought about getting into real estate. In the early days, I was excited. I'm like, oh, it's the best. And then I learned, I said, no, I'm going to anti-recruit people. And the people that go through that process are the right people. So I'd have
Yeah.
them sit there with me and we would cold call for 4 or 5 hours. And most of them, Josh, would be like, yeah, dude, I could never do that. Thank you so much for allowing me to shadow you. I'm glad that you told me. I said, I know. Because I always meet with people that want to get into real estate. I'm like, why? It is the hardest business on the planet. And a
Yeah.
very small percentage of people actually make money. And the vast majority of people are on their way out of the business because they don't make any money. That's the truth. Like
Yeah.
it's like I always refer to A Few Good Men. It's a great movie with Cuba Gooding Jr., Robert De Niro. And I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but for the audience, Cuba Gooding Jr. is like doing anything he possibly can to get on the dive team in the Navy SEALs. And De Niro's like in charge of this section of the military. Have you seen this movie?
I haven't seen it. I'm
Oh,
gonna have
dude,
to watch it now though.
it's so good. I almost want to share it with the audience, like a little clip on YouTube. So he's like doing whatever he can, Josh, to beg and plead to get into this Navy SEAL dive team. I wonder if I can get this thing. And it's not A Few Good. What am I talking about? It's not A Few Good. It's Men of Honor. I'm sorry. It's Men of Honor. That's what it's called. And so anyway, Robert De Niro's finally like, all right, dude, I'm going to let you in. And he says this really cool. He says, beware what you wish for.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is like with these people getting into this business, I want to make all the money. I want to do this. I want this fancy car. I want to have this thing. I want to, yeah, so does everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Get in line. So does everybody. You think there is no lack of ambition in the business of real estate. It's filled with egos. It is filled with, girls in bikinis calling themselves realtors on Instagram. It's filled with that. It's filled with people that think and want you to believe that they're famous, that are on the verge of filing bankruptcy. If you really, really want this thing, all right, let me show you what it takes, right? And so anyway, I digress, but I just think that we have a responsibility as leaders in this industry to set good expectations with people so they're set up to win. Anyway, all right, so you're on the team for 2.5 years. Sorry for the tangent. I get a little excited about that topic.
That's great. That's awesome. And I agree with you 100%. I do think that people really need to know what they're getting into. Also, quick side note, obviously I benefited from it being easy to get in. It should be way harder to get into real estate.
1,000%.
Even knowing what I know now, even if I had to pay more to continue being an agent, I think it would make way more sense. And it would also help all consumers knowing that like, hey, not just anyone gets in here. It's the people that have actually gone through more than just 150 hours and 2 tests, right? I mean, it's like the easiest barrier to entry ever, which is a huge problem in my opinion for people just getting in thinking, oh, I'm going to get rich now. It's like, dude, you're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah. Could you imagine if there was a minimum standard to keep your license, a minimum production standard? Because little cousin Johnny, who spends a weekend at a class, that sells his uncle's house once, like he's so underserving a consumer. And guess what? Little Johnny doesn't even say anything to the consumer. He leads the consumer to believe that he's a real expert. And then he gets the listing and is like, dude, I have no idea what to do with this thing. And then he's filled with imposter syndrome. Anyway, we're going down a rabbit hole. But the point is, I guess on this, and we'll move on, is that anybody listening or watching the show, it's not just all sunshine and rainbows. Anyway, let's move off that. So 2.5 years on the team. What was your guys' lead generation methodology? You guys did some prospecting. What else did you guys do? What type of production did you have over those 2.5 years?
So our team, I think it was more than this, but I'm going to be conservative. We were 150 units plus. I want to say the 2 years I was there, we did 200 plus. So we did quite a bit of business. I'm in a little bit of a weird area where purchase price is pretty high, but I think transactions total isn't anything crazy, right? Because I know there's plenty of agents that are doing 100 plus deals themselves, right? So we definitely did a lot of business for the area. As far as kind of what we tracked, the biggest thing was our team lead would always say, hey man, I don't care what you're doing. You better be calling, texting, messaging on Instagram, do something. And you're trying to hit 20 contacts a day. Right. So, that was really the goal at its simplest form is 20 contacts a day. And then, we'd go from there. So we would track KPIs. And I think this actually started at Keller. He was with Keller for a long time. But it was calls, contacts, appointments, and there's one other one, maybe pendings or something.
Sure.
But yeah, so we did have metrics we would track through our CRM and stuff. But the most important thing was contacts.
No doubt. Yep, no doubt. And then from lead source perspective, were you guys just doing circle prospecting? Were you calling for sell by owners, expireds? Like were you guys doing internet leads? Were you guys doing Google PPC? Like what was the lead sources?
So it was honestly a huge mix. We did have a pretty big sphere collectively because almost all of us are from this area. So work the database. He did a ton of marketing, like Google marketing. I don't even know exactly what it was, but we would have some inbound leads that would call or see a house that he posted and then would go into our CRM. So we'd get plenty of those, which the conversion was like extremely low, but still we did close plenty of those. It wasn't on Zillow, wasn't on realtor.com, but had some inbound. And then it was really kind of up to you. So it was pretty tough. It was a mix of everything, which ultimately led me towards the end of being on a team where I thought, you know what? I should probably start reaching out to people that have already tried to sell or want to sell, and there's clear motivation there if I can figure it out, which got me to you and then to expireds and stuff.
Yeah, so that's what. Let's pivot to that. So, what was it that ultimately led you to make a business decision to say, "All right, I'm going to leave this team and I'm going to go do this thing on my own"? Like, how did you come to that decision?
I got to the point to where I felt like I was doing enough business and I knew what I needed to know to where the value of a team started to come down some. And
Yep,
it wasn't that there wasn't value there anymore, but it wasn't enough to justify what I was giving up for the business that I was bringing in. So, perfect example. The not last year I kind of had a little bit of a rough year. The year before I closed 27 transactions and I had like 4 of them were team leads. So
mm,
while that was
yeah,
cool, and it helped, I realized I'm like, man, I brought in 20 plus of my own deals that I would have made significantly more money on, closed over 300K in GCI. And when you give up half of that, you're like, ugh, it might be time to look
yeah,
at the business model a little bit. So that was the biggest thing. I would say with that too, the culture started to change, and culture to me is extremely important. If you're around a bunch of people that are absolutely getting after it and selling at a high number, it's way easier to justify giving up more money because you're around other people that are crushing it, which is
that's right.
inspiring to me. Well, once some of those people started to leave and I was the guy that everyone else needed, and some of the people on our team were doing 2 transactions a year, but needing all my time, I'm like, you know what, man, it's time to make a move. So that was really the biggest thing, being transparent.
Yeah, no, it makes a ton of sense. All right, so let's talk about what you're doing right now to find success. So, talk to us about your lead generation strategy right now. Like, what are you doing right now to go out there and generate and acquire new clients?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I focused on this year was expires and cancels. I've done a little bit of FISBO stuff. Truth be told, I hate doing FISBO stuff. I feel like that's such a harder lead source. They don't value you from the beginning. They don't want to talk to an agent. It's obviously you were the man with FISBO stuff. You
I
get
love
it
them.
to the choir, but it's such a longer game, and I'm a little bit more of a turn and burn a little bit and
Yeah,
cancel and expireds. There's a clear motivation. Normally they want to sell. I'm able to reach out to them and figure out kind of what their timeline is, what happened in their opinion, why the house didn't move. We all know it's price every time or
that's
almost
right.
every time. But
Yep,
obviously coming out and saying that right out of the bat, you're like the other 10 agents, that talked
yep,
about it. They're not going to go with you. But anyways, I made the transition into cancels and expires because I knew, hey, these people are wanting to sell, and if I can position myself as a go-to person, then I'm going to get more opportunities. And yeah, I kind of just went for it, and sure enough, it has been pretty good.
it's awesome. Yeah, what? Give us the timeline. Like, when did you go off on your own? How long has it been now?
Um, let's see here. It's been about a year.
That's
It's a
right.
little over a year, around a year, maybe a little past a year. I started doing it some towards the end of being on a team, and I did find some success there. That was also when I had kind of first signed up for your coaching program. Um, and yeah, to kind of give you how I started with it, I got into your coaching program. I went through all the expired stuff. I saw that similar podcast that you did with Asher, right, which was
Yeah,
amazing. And I'm like, dude, this guy's crushing it. And I started realizing, like, okay, what do I need to learn? How do I need to get better at this? So, I love your script. Oh my gosh, the script is awesome. I'm essentially using it verbatim, but I'm using a little bit of a different method, I guess, to
sure.
send it out.
And we'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to come back to that conversation. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah,
So,
anyways, so I every day I'd read your script, right? I just read through it, I printed it out, I try to absorb it the best I can. I'm definitely not perfect with it, but I have a good understanding of the framework. I think that's something else that's important to realize is all this is a framework,
that's
right? It
right.
doesn't need to be verbatim, word for word, because I'm not you. I don't talk like you, right? We're a little bit different. We have a different style, but the framework itself is, I think, the important thing to remember.
That's right.
Um, so that's how I try to approach things now.
Yeah, I love it. And so, what does production look like in 2024 for you?
So right now, closed 20 transactions. I have well, let me give you some real numbers. So give me
Yeah,
1 sec, because I
no
do love
rush.
being transparent with this. So let's see here. We got two, three, four. 10 active listings, 3 pendings. As far as canceled and expireds total this year, we have 8 active, and then 8 closed. So around 16 total for the canceled and expireds. But as far as having opportunities, I feel like listings, and and I've heard you say this before, it just generates so many opportunities.
That's right.
So those things where it's like, I could go from 20 and finish around 40 pretty quick, depending on, the offers that start to come in and stuff. And heading into the new year, it sets you up just to generate more opportunities. So that was the biggest thing, is realizing, hey, I need to shift there and get better there, which I'm still working on, obviously, too.
Yeah, no doubt. And so, yeah, cancels, expireds plays a huge portion into your business, obviously. Where you're at now, obviously we're going into the fourth quarter as we're shooting this podcast. But like in your market, 20 closed deals, maybe you end up with 30 or 40, whatever. I mean, what type of income are we talking about in your market? What type of income are you able to represent for yourself now?
GCI this year is at 260 so far. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, done pretty well. I have higher dollar
Right.
purchase price and stuff, which helps. I'm anticipating finishing between 350, let's say 320 to 400. Again, it depends on what comes in. Do have some pendings right now, but that I'm expecting to finish between 320 and 400, depending on offers.
I mean, that's a massive difference, right, Josh? From on the team being at, I don't know, was it 150 or roughly what you were making, to now doubling your income, and now you're running your own business. You're with EXP, correct?
Yep.
And so you want to have a $16,000 cap, and then you keep 100% roughly?
16,000 cap, yeah, and then once 80-20 until you, obviously, and then 100%.
That's nice. How's that been?
It's been awesome. Yeah, it's really cool. It's one of those things where you're like, hey, let's cap as soon as we can, and then
exactly
and make as much as possible. So
all right, so canceled and expireds have been a big portion of your business. Your approach right now, I assume, I don't know, maybe you're doing some other things, but right now you're calling them. Are you doing anything besides call them? And we'll break down that conversation for the audience after that. But are you texting them? Are you messaging them on Instagram? Are you sending any type of direct mail? Are you door knocking them? Or are you just calling?
So actually, here's, I think, where it's a little bit different. I've definitely called plenty of canceled and expireds, and I feel like the one issue when you do that, and I'm not saying that I was doing it perfect every time or whatever, there's more efficient ways to do it. But the problem is, if you're the 3rd, 4th, 10th person to call them, good luck. Yep. Right? They already hate you. They've already heard from too many other people. I feel like, again, this is personal opinion. I feel like you put them in a position where no matter what, there's going to be a little bit of resistance there, sales resistance. So what I started doing is I text every time. Every single time I send a text, it's an opener. It's actually your opener, right? Where would it help if I read it to you?
Sure. I mean, the audience, I'm sure, would love it, and they'd get a lot out of it.
Yeah, let's do that. So
you get a fresh expired in whatever. Where are you getting your expired leads from? Everyone always likes to ask that as well.
I just go into the MLS, right? I go into the MLS. I see kind of what, obviously the new ones for the day. I use a service called Batch Leads, right? To pull all my data. Reason for that is I do a little bit of circle prospecting and some other stuff too. And I feel like it just has an easy interface.
Cool.
I know RedX and there's some other platforms that might be easier to give you all the data at once for expireds. We don't have a ton in my area. So to give you an idea, there's maybe 3 a day, 2 to 3. I know some markets, there's 30 or 100.
Yeah, exactly.
We're in a different spot.
Okay, so you get one of these and then you text them. Yeah, let's walk us through what your text strategy looks like.
Yeah, so my text is super simple. Here's my opener, say, hey, name. I was reaching out about your property on blank. I saw it came off the market recently and was curious if you ended up selling it privately or if it might still be available. # Josh EXP, right? So I send the same message every time. Sometimes, if they live super close to me, I'll throw something in there like, hey, I live right around the corner, whatever. Sure. But what I found through texting is if you don't give them something simple that doesn't look robotic and you don't give them a question, why would they respond to you?
That's right.
hey, I can help you out. It's like, yeah, so can 1,800 other realtors, right?
Yep, it has to be a question.
Yes. So ask them a question. And then based off that response tells me a ton, right? Because if they're willing to take the time and respond to me, I know, hey, there might be some interest here, right? So depending on kind of how the question or their response goes, usually it's, yeah, it's still available, right? If they say it's still available, I just keep asking questions, right? And they're simple. Hey, gotcha. Looks like a super nice property. I'm curious, when you had it listed, what type of feedback were you getting from your agent after showings, right? So I
Love
just
it.
move through the framework.
Yep.
After getting a few good questions and figuring out kind of, yes, there's still an opportunity here, that's when I'll insert an appointment, right? Or ask for an appointment every time and see how it goes. I've had some layups, to be honest, where people
Sure.
are, yeah, still want to sell it, looking at new options right now. Great. Easy opportunity, right? You just earned
Love it.
yourself a chance to get in the door. So, yeah, that's kind of my opener.
So how many, we talked about when you were on the team, you were doing 20 contacts a day. How many are you doing now? I'm just curious.
Oh, I'm going to be
And that would include text messaging, all of the stuff you're doing. How many contacts are you making per day now?
I'm pretty bad at tracking, to be real with you. It ranges anywhere from like 5 contacts up to 30, right?
Sure.
And the reason being, I mainly am texting, right? So, I'm not huge on cold calling right now. Again, I've done it plenty. If I have to call someone, I will, but I'm sending text. Where you start to get to as you're doing more transactions, which is I'm figuring out my systems at this point too, and who
That's
can
right.
do a lot of the servicing. So there's plenty of days where I'm like, man, 13 active listings and a bunch of other stuff going on. Sometimes it feels really hard to prospect, right? We're
No
like, man,
doubt.
I need some help in these other areas to free up some time. So I'm going through that weird transition right now where I'm trying to bring some people in to help. But yeah, I range anywhere from like 5 to 30, just depends.
Yeah, totally fair. This would be a guess too, but like of your appointments that you set, your listing appointments that you set, a couple questions on there. One, what percentage are you able to set those all through text without ever having a voice to voice conversation? Like what percentage if you had to guess?
I'd guess like 80%.
Yeah,
I'm
it's great.
serious.
We're having a lot of success with text, no doubt.
Yes, the reason I believe this too, Brandon, is it depends on the age group, right? Like
Sure.
if we're
Yeah.
talking 50 and older, you probably don't mind getting a phone call because that's maybe what you were used to. If we're
Yeah.
talking about 50 and under, right, or someone like me, I don't want to answer the phone. Now, I got zero problems talking on the phone, but when you're busy, you're working, you got kids, everyone has the same thought. I'll call them back. They never
Yeah.
will. Oh, I'll
No.
talk to them later. They never will. So what I like, and the reason why I started doing this is if they answer my text, I know there's some level of interest there.
That's
So,
right.
and as far as whether I feel like I need to get on the phone or not, completely depends. If I have someone that's super short with me on text and I've already asked a few good questions and I feel like there's an opportunity there, sometimes I'll go, you know what? It might make more sense to call this person to try to get a little bit more out. But again, I've had plenty of people that send me long messages back, didn't work out for whatever reason, we had about 3 showings, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, cool. This is a great opportunity. I'm just going to keep texting them. Why not?
Yeah.
So
No doubt. Are you incorporating any video texting to put a face with the name to humanize yourself, to make it easier for the prospect to feel comfortable texting you back?
I've tried that. I haven't tried it at a large enough scale to see how I really feel about it, or to see kind of the results. The only thing I started thinking before doing that is I've sent a couple where I just feel awkward. And I feel like because they don't know me yet, they're like, who the hell is this guy sending me a video? Right. Maybe if I was a little better looking, it would work better. But, I get those and I'm like, man, I don't know. I've had way more success just texting, honestly.
Yeah.
No video, super simple. So no, not sending a ton of video messages right now.
So you haven't done the sniper video text where you have their listing pulled up on the MLS with a share screen, going through their listing with some things that the other agent could have been doing differently. You haven't done that yet either, right?
No, that's a phenomenal idea though. But yeah, no, haven't done that. It's simply me asking an opening question every time and then trying to pull a little bit more out and figure out kind of what happened. And I think this is the important thing, which also brings it back to like where you started, your skill set, all that stuff. The magic is in getting in front of people.
That's right.
We all know that. The magic in sales is connecting with a person, demonstrating that you clearly know what you're doing and having them feel like, hey, I trust this guy, I trust this team, that they're going to get my property sold.
That's
So
right.
all this is great. It still comes back to, what is your skill set? Do you have a good skill set? And then ultimately, yes, set appointments, because the only way to get a better skill set is actually doing it and getting the experience. But you honestly have to have both. I've had agents in my market that ask me about, hey, dude, I see you're crushing it with expireds. And I'm just thinking, man, to be honest, like, it's not that easy, right? You
I
still got to get
know.
in front of them. And once you're in front of them, what are you going to say? Right.
Yeah.
So, I think that's super important to be transparent about too, is you got to have both.
Yeah. Because I would also, I'm going to assume I know the answer, but like, I bet you most of your appointments are coming from your lead generation efforts and not as a result of lead follow-up or building a big pipeline. I would imagine, because it's mostly expired and canceled, that let's just say if you were setting a 10 appointments in a month, let's just say, that 8 or 9 of them would be from the very first time you were to reach out to them. And it's hard to build a pipeline with expireds. Am I wrong, or is that kind of how your business looks?
No, that's great. Absolutely true too. So a lot of my appointments come from either the first contact or
Right.
maybe the second or third. I do understand how important follow-up is, right? I'm a big Cardone guy, right? Sales happen
Sure.
between 6 and 10 contacts or after 6 contacts. So I do try to, for example, if someone doesn't get back to me, or, whatever, they ignore the text, I will send follow-up messages. My timing is a little bit sporadic. Sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's a day later. I have had some success, after the first contact, where I'm like, hey, did you get my last text? And then start a conversation. So yeah, but majority of my appointments are coming pretty quick. Right when I get in contact with them, they're like, yeah, we're still interested. Boom, I'm trying to get in there.
Yeah. Makes sense. I mean, because I think one of the areas that I try to coach agents on that they're missing is, they most of the time when their business is built like yours is, with it's just expired and canceled, they go from contact to appointment set. They never reap the benefit of contact to lead to appointment set,
Mm-hmm.
because generating a lead, you can just, if you're, how many expireds or cancels would you say is in your system that you've never talked to? Probably hundreds, probably thousands, right? Tons. I know you say you're only getting 3 or 4 a day, but those pile up every single day, right? So in a month, you
Yeah.
probably have, 3 times, you're getting 60 to 80 a month, right?
Yeah.
And if you look over
Yeah.
the course of a year, it's 1,000 right there in 1 year. So my point is, if an agent's setting 8 listing appointments off the first contact, my question to them always is, okay, what about all the ones that you didn't get the appointment on the first contact that were good conversations?
Yeah.
And there's a
Yeah.
big opportunity there. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree 100%. In full transparency here, like, I still got to get way better too, right? There's definitely magic in the follow up. I know it's extremely important to be talking, not just one time, because like you said, some people really just aren't ready to go back on for
That's
whatever
it.
reason.
Yeah,
Right? Hey, we're going to live here temporarily. Hey, we got to do a couple repairs, X, Y, and Z. So I
exactly.
think it's important when you're reaching out to people, whether you're calling, texting, emailing, whatever, if you've had a good response. I do have lists in batch leads. So I use Brivity CRM.
Sure.
Batch leads is also like a CRM if you're not familiar with it. So I have lists that are organized. So like, for example, all this expires in September, I add them to a September 24 expires. So I
Great.
can't go back in each month and go, okay, I didn't talk to this person. I talked to this person wasn't ready yet. That's really how I'm organizing my stuff right now. I
Smart.
don't ever transfer someone to my CRM until I know for sure, hey, this is a real opportunity. I love what you talk about in your systems. You're like, guys, the problem is you're transitioning people that are not real leads, right?
That's right.
What's the point of doing that? You're just taking up space from people that actually are a real lead. So my CRM is a little slim, right? I
Yeah.
don't add a ton of people to it, but it is important to have some organizer. And for me, I just use batch leads, whatever they have.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Let's shift to the listing appointment. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is what you were kind of alluding to. It's like you have to have a system in your business of generating appointments. We just talked about that for the last 15 minutes. Then you also have to have a skill and a system of acquiring clients at the listing appointment, because who cares on how you get to the listing appointment? But
Yeah.
what matters is, what do you do when you get there? Because if you're competing with other agents, you got to ask yourself, okay, why would someone list their house with me versus
Yeah.
any other agent? So talk to us about your listing presentation. What are you finding? What have you learned? What's working for you? Or is there any techniques? Is there any part of the listing presentation that you learned that you're finding really works with real sellers?
I think keeping it extremely simple when you go on these appointments is key. Meaning, if you go in there and you try to do the entire dog and pony show, which there is a little bit of that, it's like you just get lost. And I've noticed
Mhm.
me personally, I'll get lost. So what I do is I go in there like any other appointment too. This is the same. I say, hey, thanks for having me over, Mr. Seller. Hey, why don't you show me around really quick so I can, see the property? I'm asking them questions, trying to build rapport. That's a Haas Pratt method, right?
Yeah,
Listing
sure.
bump. Try to build some rapport, ask some questions. Then once we're done, sit down with them and say, okay, hey, I want to show you a couple things as far as what things that I found, that could make a big difference here. Still start with the CMA. Hey, here's what the market's suggesting your home's going to sell. I've tried to remove myself from the value as far as the home value. I feel like
Yeah.
agents hang themselves when they say,
Yep.
I think your property's going to sell for 850. Well, if it doesn't, you just screwed yourself.
That's right.
So, I always use a range. I've heard you say that before, and I love that. One line I've used a lot is, if any agent ever comes in here and tells you your house is going to sell for this exactly, they're lying. We have to work in terms of ranges. So I use a low range and a middle range, you could say. And sometimes it's a $25,000, $50,000 variance. Right?
Yeah.
If we're on a rural property that's 850 and I have one of those right now, it's like it might sell for 800. Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm telling them 850 exactly, I'm screwing myself if it doesn't move there. So, that's worked pretty well. So take them through the CMA. Then I get straight into what I do for marketing. And I say, hey, I can't speak on what anyone else does, but here's what's going to be different. And then that's where there's a little bit more of the kind of dog and pony type stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Hey, I have a landing page directly from my website. We're running targeted ad campaigns. Here's what it looks like. I show them a video of other properties that I've sold, right? And one of them, for example, the video I like to use is a $1.3 million property, right?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
and yours is worth 500. This is 1.3. Already there's some credibility there. Damn, 1.3, right? So
Yeah.
don't brag about, just slightly insert that. Hey, here's a video from a $1.3 million property I sold. I show them. It's like a minute video. We're taking this video with this landing page. We're running targeted ad campaigns. I show them where we run it. A lot of it's on Facebook, right?
Yep.
So, hey, here's where we're running. I get data from the title company showing where people are moving from. Okay, where I'm at, a lot of California, Washington, mainly West Coast. I just explained that to them, and that has worked really well because I think it shows, hey, this guy has a plan, right? Even if the plan doesn't work perfect every time, there's something there that I do consistently where they go, okay, this is a lot better than just hiring someone to stick a sign in the yard.
That's right.
I love saying about you're like, be careful because there's a lot of agents that just stick a sign in the yard and pray someone else sells it. And it's like, that happens all the time. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I put a sign and it does sell pretty quick. And it's like, awesome, right? I didn't have to spend a ton of money, but either way, there's still so much involved, as where I always feel like I'm justifying what I make every time. It's a lot.
No, it's a lot. It's a lot. And the listing presentation, we could do probably a 5-10 hour podcast on just that. There's so much to that conversation. We just don't have time to get into the whole nuance. I guess, let me just ask you this. I mean, two questions. One, I think that if you could go back and do it again, would you join a team or would you go solo?
Absolutely join a team. 100%.
Totally agree. So you and I are on lockstep there. The next question is, for the person who's getting licensed, who maybe has their test this week or next week, if you could share with them, going back, knowing what you know now, what would you tell them to make sure that when they start in this thing, that they have the highest likelihood of succeeding in a business with a 90% failure rate?
I tell them exactly that. I say, hey, this is a very tough business and you need to make sure that you're in an environment and around people that have done this at a high level. I always push the team route. Obviously, I have a team now and I feel like that's one area I really like to help people in. So I'm more than happy to take people on. It's going to be a little challenge along the way because obviously it takes more time. I have a business partner involved too, who's been in the business a long time and done well. So it's kind of both of us. But I tell them exactly that. I say, hey, get around people that have done this, pay attention to people that have done this, actually show up and watch and listen and just see through experience. right? I try to bring some agents on appointments with me. I
Smart.
think that's super important so they can see it live in action. I'm a very visual person, and I don't know about you, but I also learn better when I'm doing something, right? It's like
Big
failing,
time.
learning, doing it again or whatever. So I just think it's super important to, yeah, you need help starting out, man. People get into this thinking that they can just do it on their own. And if you have that mindset, you failed on day one. I guarantee it.
I love it. Makes total sense. Well, Josh, man, I appreciate this very much. I took down a bunch of notes. I'm sure the audience did too. If people want to connect with you, right, or talk to you about potentially joining your team, where can they find you?
Find me on Instagram, call Joshy today, right? There's a million Joshes. There's one Joshy. Call Joshy today on Instagram. And then I'm obviously in the group with you guys, right? So I always pay attention. I've had a few agents text me or message me on Facebook. More than happy to break some of this stuff down on an individual basis. We can set up a time and kind of go over some stuff.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate you very much. And I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks a ton, man. I really appreciate the opportunity.